Hey everybody, welcome back. We are here today with another sample from the big old Kindle pile. The many Kindle samples that I have that I need to go through. And I'm going through them. That's what this is for. So, our book this time is this one. It is Underground Airlines by Ben H. Winters. And yeah, I don't remember where I heard about this. I need to take better notes about where I hear about some of these. It might have been on one of those kind of Reddit threads about really cool current books. I don't recall. But nevertheless, it's a neat looking book. The cover, because again, we do judge by covers here. That's what we do. It's a neat idea. It's very much, we got the kind of the wheat field, kind of iconic little American landscape. But of course, everything is turned not only upside down, but kind of at a Dutch angle as well, right? So it's all wrong. Everything is reversed and inverted. Underground Airlines, of course, does bring to mind the Underground Railroad of the slave era times in the U.S. when people would help slaves to escape slave states to free states. Reminiscent of that, it's got some other good text here. New York Times bestseller. It's got some blurbs from USA Today, NPR, Washington Post. So the publishers are really kind of going all out to make sure that we are convinced that this is a book that we need to read. So let's find out if it's a book that I need to read. All right, let me take a look at the sample and I will be right back. Okay, this is going to be fun. First thing I want to say is this sample is too short. Too short. Samples, I don't know how they decide how long samples are. I've read some books where the sample's really long and you kind of get a lot greatly invested in the book, and I guess that's one strategy. But this one, the sample's real short, and I just want to read more. So, but we'll get to that. First thing, a map. You know I love books with maps in them. And this is the U.S., or at least the most central to east U.S., with 4 states that are labeled as slave states. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Carolina. Right? No more North, no more South Carolina. Carolina. So we got 4 slave states and 4 free states, which is interesting. I studied the Civil War. I'm not an expert in it, but I know there were more than 4 slave states, so something tells me something's weird about that. The next weird thing comes up right after that, which is an extract from I'll start reading from my notes here now, an extract from the 18th Amendment to the Constitution. Now, you and I, we all know that the 18th Amendment to the Constitution was the amendment that outlawed alcohol. It was the Prohibition Amendment, right? So we're like, all right, that's weird, but we know that didn't happen in 1861. No. This is apparently based on a real proposal by one Senator John Crittenden. So, right away, I'm going to Wikipedia, I'm doing some research. But this guy, Senator Crittenden, proposed a sort of a final solution. I hate to say that, but a solution to slavery, which was to say that the Constitution would be amended in such a way that the U.S. government could not interfere with slavery in any way, allowing essentially the slave states to keep their slaves in perpetuity. Now, this 18th Amendment, it didn't happen in our world. That never went down. And Civil War and all sorts of other stuff resulted from that. But yeah, the Crittenden Compromise, I guess, was one way that they thought they could deal with slavery once and for all. And it was kind of by admitting that, well, I guess we're going to have slaves now. That didn't really happen. However, in this book, it did. In the book, it did. And the right to own slaves and the right to be a slave state was enshrined in the Constitution, which is fascinating. Oh. And by this point, I'm like, I'm almost halfway through the sample. No. But now we finally get into the narrative itself, which definitely takes place today. There are cell phones, there are diners, there's all that other good stuff. So we're in the present, but we're in the present as affected by this 18th Amendment. And one thing that I do really like in literature is I like alternate history stories. If you ever read Harry Turtledove, he's very, very good for that. But I do like alternate history stories because I am a fan of history. I like history, I like American history, and it is neat to kind of speculate on where American history might have gone if things had been a bit different, right? If our, predecessors had made some different choices. And in this case, if the Crittenden Compromise had gone through, what might the world be like? So we have our narrator. It's a first-person point of view story. We have our narrator who is a Mr. Jim Dirksen. That's an interesting choice of names. Jim, if you've read the Tom Sawyer stories. But he is in a diner. He is trying to talk to this priest, and his wife is still in one of the slave states, which is known in the book as the Hard Four, I think they call them. And he wants to get his wife out. Of course he would, because his wife is working in a very dangerous sort of mining complex, where she's working a strip mine. She's trying to mine bauxite. There's terrible conditions there, and so he wants his wife out. And he has, for some reason, he believes this priest he's talking to, who is named Father Barton, is somehow connected to this semi-mythical underground airline, which can get people out of those slave states. Unfortunately, Father Barton very clearly says, I don't know what you're talking about. I cannot help you. There's nothing I can do, leaving Jim with nowhere to go and no way to save his wife from what's there. And that's kind of where the story ends, right? Jim has been turned down by Father Barton. What is he going to do? Which I would love to know. That is a great story. But I suspect that one of the reasons Father Barton turned him down is because there were a couple of police officers in the diner. The setting is in Indianapolis. It's in Indiana. And what you understand by reading just through this first chapter is that basically the states, like Indiana calls itself a clean hands state, which says that it does not import any kind of goods or labor or services from slave states. And there's even a North American Human Rights Association based in Montreal, which monitors supply lines to ensure that products made in slave states do not go into these clean hand states. However, we all kind of know how this can be gotten around. But nevertheless, there are police there in the diner. I kind of suspect Father Barton doesn't want to say anything where the police are there. And I believe that, reading this book forward, we're going to see Father Barton kind of maybe reconnect with Jim at some point and say, look, I can help you. It's just you chose a really bad place to meet and to talk to me about this. So I do suspect that Father Barton is going to come back into the narrative at some point. Probably not until Jim has chosen to do something truly foolish and dangerous, because he loves his wife. He wants his wife to be safe. Why wouldn't he? So that's great. That's all great. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Jim rescues his wife, if Jim can rescue his wife. Maybe she's not even alive anymore. Who knows? But what really draws me to the story at this point is really the world building, right? I'm a fan of worlds. I like worlds. Worlds are cool. And what Ben Winters has built is an alternate America. And he's already, even in the first chapter, we can see how not only America is different, but kind of how the world has changed in response to slavery being constitutionally enshrined. As I said, there's the North American Human Rights Association. So this place based in Montreal, which is trying to ensure that slave-made goods don't get into the main supply lines. There is something called the European Consensus, which is an international treaty which blocked trade to the United States for a long time. So there's all these countries that will not trade with the U.S. because the U.S. tolerates slavery, although they do note that Japan left the consensus in 2012 in order to sell stuff because money's always going to win. But that kind of tells me something else, is that, all right, if the United States is kind of locked off from trading with Europe, then what kind of effect is that going to have on the U.S. economy and the way that people live? So I've got all these questions about this world that Winters has built, and I really want to see them answered. So that definitely makes me want to read the book. You get a lot established in the first chapter, as I said, about the world, about our main character, our narrative point of view, our narrator. And yeah, do I want to read the rest of the book? Of course I want to read the rest of the book. Why wouldn't I want to? It's alternate history. It's really cool. It sounds like a lot of fun, and it's good reading. And I feel bad for Jim, who wants to get his wife back and can't. So of course I want to read the rest of the book. And of course I think it's going to have something to say about today. It is very hard to write a story about American slavery that is not in some way a commentary on America, the U.S. today in the current times, because our era of slavery still has a direct effect on who we are as a nation. Any kind of slave narrative, whether it's this or Kindred, remember we talked about Kindred a while back, is going to be a comment on the United States in the present. Can't not be, in a way. So yeah, do I want to read this book? Yeah, I do. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks really interesting, and I'm curious to see what Winters has come up with. I want to see how much further he's taken this world and the ramifications of slavery being legal for 150 years. So yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. Nice work, Mr. Winters. Good job. So if you've read this book, if you've read Underground Airlines, and you would like to talk a little bit more about it, please get in the comments, as Mr. Mulligan would say, and tell me what you think. Make sure that you subscribe, of course, so you know when the next one comes out. And tell me what your ideas are, maybe on this book and any others that you think I should read. So, until the next time, until our next video, thank you very much for stopping by. I always appreciate it. I will see you next time.